Hi, I'm Steve Clemons, and I have a question. With less than 3 months left to the U.S. elections, what do Americans really want? Let's get to the bottom line. In less than 90 days, Americans are going to decide whether President Trump or his Democratic challenger, Joe Biden, will run the country for the next 4 years. Even though most polls put Biden ahead, especially in the crucial swing states, it's risky business to predict which way the race will go. And there are a lot of black swans, or what I call unexpected events, that can happen between now and then. To get a closer look at the pulse of the American people these days, we turn to someone who has been listening to them and crafting political messages for them for decades. Frank Luntz is a legend in the world of political communication, and he's been helping Republican campaigns and other causes find the right words to persuade folks. And he wrote the book on it, Words That Work. It's not what you say, it's what people hear. Frank, really great to be with you today. So let me just start with how you framed your book. How do you see what Americans are feeling today as opposed to what they are thinking?
Well, it's difficult because our feeling is now become so powerful. Our emotions are actually more significant than our thought process, and emotions have become that thought process. When you're afraid for your health, when you're afraid for your job, when you're afraid for your country, when you watch the disputes in the streets and you see that it's happening everywhere, it is not just a rational reaction that we have, it's also emotional, and it is just as legitimate. I keep trying to explain to media outlets like yours that we're not trying to get the numbers behind, the stats behind everything that's happening. We want to know the consequences based on what we do, based on what we say, and based on what happens around us. We don't need to know how many people have been infected with COVID. We don't need to know how many people lost their jobs. What we want to know is, how does it affect us personally, and what can we do to alleviate that impact?
Frank, you're one of the most brilliant wordsmiths I know, and you've been trying to advise the Trump administration to experiment with some different words rather than law and order. Talk about public safety. Try to think about some of these crises, because Americans are feeling a health crisis, at the same time an economic crisis, and also, of course, racial divides and tension across the nation. And have you been able to succeed at all with those you know so well in helping to guide them with language that would help give people confidence in the future as opposed to fear about the future?
Well, let me just correct that question. Just one thing, which makes it sound like I'm advising the Trump administration. I've started to use Twitter because it allows me the chance to communicate to hundreds of thousands of people at the same time. And I know that journalists like you follow my communication. I've been very public about the words I've recommended for both Donald Trump and Joe Biden, because at this point, right now, it is more important that we alleviate the fear that I know I felt, and that we find some way to prevent this division from getting any worse. And so I am using Twitter to communicate to people, to suggest that maybe they should take a different approach. And I'm going to give you this specific example. Doesn't matter whether you're Republican or Democrat, conservative or progressive. What the public is looking for right now are policies that will bring safety, responsibility, and sensibility, and peace of mind. Let me try that again. Safe, sensible, and responsible are the three values that the public is looking for the most, so that it will yield peace of mind. Even I, because this is a live interview, even I don't have the words precisely down, because I'm thinking, has anything changed since when I first wrote this? Who's the audience? Who's listening to this? Words mean different things to different people. Right after this call, I've got a Zoom call with a Palestinian business leader, an Israeli business leader, and I'm going to try to thread the needle so that my questions and my words that I use with them will appeal to everybody, rather than seeming to be pro one side or another. And by the way, that is the most difficult thing to do right now, because that idea of a cancel culture is absolutely alive and well. if I say something wrong in this interview, there will be hundreds of thousands of people that will be demanding that you never interview me again, or that they will turn me off. I don't remember a time in my lifetime, it's 58 years now, when it has been so difficult to find the right words and phrases to bring people together, to create unanimity, to create common ground. And that's why I appreciate this interview. And that's why I'm a little bit nervous, quite frankly, because you're punished. You're killed if you get it wrong. That's what the cancel culture means right now.
I think that you have always been very sensitive without judging people's voices and where they're at, that you've gone in to try to get the authentic frame that people are carrying with them. I may disagree with some of those frames or be uncomfortable with them, but this is one of the things I think you bring to the table so well, whether it's in Israeli-Palestinian issues or whether it is in how Republicans frame this, or I've listened to it and learned a lot from you. But as you look at things like, you talked about cancel culture and what's going on as we go through this drama in America about which figures we can look for. I'm also looking at scientists like, Dr. Fauci or Dr. Birx recently of late, where we seem to have an assault on science. Yes. Have you explored that a little bit? Because when you listen to Richard Edelman says that people are looking to scientists and to doctors and source of authority more than ever. But at the same time, we see a raging debate about the solvency of science. Where are you in that? What are you hearing in that?
That's a great question. By the way, even look at how we're dressed right now. You know that I never would have done this interview before COVID in a polo shirt. You probably would have had a tie on, and you may be relaxed and informal.
I wore the jacket for you.
You are perfectly coiffed for this interview. And by the way, something that the viewers may not know is that if I look at you, it means I'm not looking at the camera. So in trying to make eye contact with you, I'm actually making eye contact with the viewer. And the reason why I bring this up is that it's not what you say that matters. It's what people hear. It's not what you necessarily communicate. It's how you do it. And so I'll give you 3 examples of this. I'm trying to teach people, ask questions at the beginning of any kind of communication, because that shows that you care about what your listener or what your viewer thinks, and that you're trying to put yourself on their level, not above them and not below them. Second is the ideas, the principle of, I get it, I understand, and even better, I want to be your voice. It's actually the best line that Donald Trump used in the entire 2016 campaign. I'm with her, which was Hillary Clinton's slogan. I'm with her suggests that I have endorsed or I'm on this side. I want to be your voice says I'm on your side. And third, and you mentioned about doctors and scientists, we're polling all of this. So this is not opinion. This is what the public is telling me. And doctors have never been more trusted in more than 30 years than they are right now. Doctors and medical professionals, which is why the most powerful phrase you can communicate in the case of COVID is that I am depending upon doctors and data. Depending says that I'm listening and I'm learning from them. Doctors are the profession the public trusts most, and data, because in the end, they do want you to take a scientific approach. The thing that is most frustrating to me, and I'll use masks as an example, we are safer by using masks. I don't believe in the mask police. I don't believe in screaming at someone in public if they're not wearing a mask. I just want them to stay away from me. And I will stay away from someone unless I have a mask on. That's not just good communication, that's good behavior. And I don't understand this battle over science. For another example, and this may surprise you, I'm working right now on a new lexicon for climate. And notice at the outset, I don't call it climate change, I call it climate. Because the moment you call it climate change, you politicize it and you lose voters who are on the center or center right. This is a serious issue, this is a real issue, and we need a new approach that breaks down all these political and partisan barriers and divides us for no apparent reason. And I hope to unveil this language and this new approach at Davos in January, if we have it, because issues like this are so serious. I'm a different guy. You and I have known each other for a little while, and you wouldn't know that I had a stroke in January. I'm a different guy today than I was the last time you and I talked. And I'm determined to take this skill that I'm fortunate to have developed and to take my interest in learning from people and applying it to the most controversial issues of the day, whether that be the Israeli-Palestinian conflict or issues of climate or racial reconciliation. And that word reconciliation is so powerful right now because it does mean bringing people back together. And that's why I accepted this interview, because it was longer than most. And you always give people the chance to communicate. So can I apologize right now? Because of the stroke, I don't speak as quickly as I used to, and I don't bring together my thoughts. It takes me longer to land the plane. Basically, I need a longer runway. And thank you for giving me one.
Well, Frank, I'm very happy to give you a long runway, and I'll also say I think you're speaking eloquently and sharply, and as you know, I don't say things to be nice. That's the way it is. But let me say, before the Donald Trump-Hillary Clinton election, I interviewed Vice President Biden at that point. He was not in the race, but I said, give me how you're looking at it. And he said something very powerful to me at the time that gave me an insight into what might happen in that election. And he said the Democratic Party had become a party of snobs, that it had become detached from the working realities of lots of folks in the country. I'm interested in that framing and whether you think Joe Biden is someone who people look at today, given his language and framing, at fixing that, or has being struggling with COVID and being relegated to some degree to his basement, not entirely, robbed him of that chance to show that the Democrats are not a party of snobs. I mean, I'm interested in how you see that.
So you've given me, this is a very easy question to give a pro-Trump and anti-Biden answer, but I don't want to do that. Joe Biden is clearly leading Donald Trump right now. I don't know when this interview airs, but it will, as I look at my computer, August 10th, 2020. Joe Biden has a 9-point lead, and that is significant. That is beyond the margin of error. No matter what Trump or his people say to you, he is behind. And if the election were held today, Joe Biden would win over 300 electoral votes. It would not be that close. The president does better in those swing states, which tend to have more working class Americans, tend to be more based on manufacturing. And this is Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania. Ohio is right now an even race. North Carolina, the vice president, former vice president, has a lead. Even in Florida, which Trump had been leading up until about 6 weeks ago, Biden has a lead right now. So being in the basement has not hurt him. In fact, I would argue that Donald Trump has spoken too much in the last 2 months. And it's not that the public doesn't want to hear from him. They don't want to hear the language that he's been communicating. I'll do a few of them for your voters, for your viewers right now. And by the way, that's been the biggest problem, is that I am precise about words. And because of my condition, the wrong words have slipped out on occasion. It is viewers. Donald Trump talks about law and order when he should be talking about public safety. Law and order, to most people, reminds them of policemen with a club hitting protesters over the head, and that's not what they want. Most Americans want safe streets and safe neighborhoods. Donald Trump talks about his supporters being warriors. Most people don't want to be a warrior. They're simply hardworking taxpayers, and they want to be respected for what they contribute. And a third example is that Trump talks about dominating the streets, and what the public really wants are safe streets and safe neighborhoods. He's got the right idea, but it's the wrong execution. And on Joe Biden's side, he's in very strong shape right now. But in the end, he's going to have to come out from the bunker. He's going to have to communicate where he stands. I've seen some Democrats argue that he should not debate Donald Trump. I would tell you that would be a fatal mistake, because even if the American people are upset with what Donald Trump is saying, they would be even more upset with Joe Biden saying nothing at all. This election is not over. Joe Biden does understand what went wrong with the Democrats in 2016. but he has to explain why he's not of the elite. He has to explain why he understands the hopes and fears of the manufacturer and the school teacher. And by the way, that brings one other point up, which is that Biden has not talked about schools opening, and Donald Trump has talked too much about them. Does he not understand that parents are deeply concerned? 51% of American parents are either extremely or very concerned about sending their kids back to school. Only 23% are either just a little bit concerned or not concerned at all. So it's 2-1. So while the public does want schools to open, they want them to open, again, going back to that language, safely, sensibly, and responsibly. And they don't want to be pushed into sending their kids to buildings that they don't feel comfortable with. So Trump is too animated, he's too caffeinated on issues of reopening schools, and Joe Biden is nowhere to be found. So I have a problem with both sides on how they communicate, because I don't think either side is listening. Now, I'm going to do something that I never would have done before COVID, which is I'm allowed, if I can actually open it, to have a drink during a live interview.
Absolutely,
So,
with our enthusiasm. Frank, will Biden be looked at as Biden versus Trump, and this VP choice doesn't matter? Or do you think it becomes something that a lot of people are going to measure Joe Biden by in ways that could be surprising?
yes, I think this pick matters more than even John McCain when he chose Sarah Palin. And that pick clearly hurt him, not early in the selection process, but later on, after the public started to hear really how little she knew about the national issues. She was a phenomenon, and she actually helped John McCain take a lead over Barack Obama. But she didn't do as well as she could have in the debate, and she was not as substantive as the public was looking for, particularly when John McCain was over 70. Well, Joe Biden is 77. He'll be 78 on Election Day. We've never elected a president this old before. And so it's not that they're going to add anything to Biden's total. I think he's now getting about the maximum that he could be getting. The question is whether he detracts, whether she detracts, because we know it's going to be her, from the candidacy. There are two Democrats that I think, and I don't necessarily agree with them, but there are two Democrats that I believe would add, or at least not hurt, the Biden candidacy. One of them is Karen Bass, the Democratic congresswoman from California, who is head of the Congressional Black Caucus. She is more to the left than the average American, but her kindness and her decency is so strong and so apparent in how she answers questions, in how she deals with issues. And I believe that while substance absolutely matters, the character of the candidate matters more at this point in 2020, and that the American people are looking for someone who they trust, someone who they have confidence in. And I think Karen Bass would be a brilliant choice. And the same for Susan Rice. And once again, on a policy perspective, I will be trashed by conservatives, and I know that. But Susan Rice has incredible foreign policy experience. And if she's not VP, I anticipate her as being Secretary of State. She is knowledgeable. She's experienced in the Obama administration, and she pulls no punches. And the American people want someone who says what they mean, means what they say, and then does what they say. And that describes Susan Rice. Either of those choices would be good for Joe Biden because they won't cost him votes, and they are with people of decency and of civility. And the one candidate who I think would be the worst choice, who is actually the front runner at this point, is Kamala Harris. And all I need to do is just, for your viewers, just go back and Google Kamala Harris and Stephen Colbert. He asked the senator why she was so tough on him in that first debate and how they could possibly make amends because the questions were so difficult from Harris to Biden. And Harris's response was, it's a debate. And then this fake laughter that clearly someone taught her. She says it's a debate 8 times, 8 seconds. She was so clearly cued and inauthentic in that response. And to me, a debate is the most important time because that's when you're dealing with real issues and real substance. If she's chosen, then voters have the right to say, we don't want this ticket because she is too likely a chance of assuming the presidency to be trusted. I just thought the response was horrific, inauthentic, embarrassing, and I actually think it shows that she's not ready for prime time, and she's clearly not ready to be Joe Biden's vice president.
You know, it's fascinating listening to you about the nuances and the kind of, rich tapestry of emotions that people feel around, personalities and all the stuff that is swirling out there. And as we get close to bringing this close, I'd just love to know, is there a possibility for either of these administrations, whether it's a Biden administration comes ahead or a second Trump administration, to get out of the business of division and get to something? When you talked about climate a minute ago, it really hit me because you're trying to find words that people can trust, that get away from the baggage that has come with other frames, and whether we get back to kind of a higher trust America with trust internally between Americans. Because right now, you've got two different worlds, maybe three different worlds inside America that don't trust each other. And I'm just interested, is that a viable political path, or is the more beneficial path to them from their own perspective one to continue to manipulate the politics of division?
So it depends on what time frame you're asking. And by the way, if Americans knew that this was the kind of interviews that Al Jazeera, there you go. I would have had no problem before the 10th of January saying Al Jazeera. I got it after the third try. If it's election day, I'm very pessimistic. I think that we've only just begun to see the negativity. I think that the two campaigns are going to unload on each other. And by election day, and in fact, I'll give you one statistic to back this up. Right now, Biden people all think Joe Biden's going to win. Donald Trump people all think Donald Trump's going to win. The difference is that Biden people will accept a Trump victory. Trump people will not accept Biden victory. And I am very nervous about what happens the day after the election. We are still counting votes, and it's still not clear who the president is. I think this is a time of tremendous peril for the country. After the election, I think that it will be absolutely necessary, whoever wins, to reach out to appoint people from the, quote, other side, unquote, and to make public gestures of reaching across the aisle, of extending your hand, because let's say whoever wins, let's say they win by 6 points, 53-47. That means that 40% of Americans did not vote. Almost half did not vote for that person. While Barack Obama is correct that elections have consequences, I hope and I pray that we respect the minority. We're doing it right now with Black Lives Matter. 12% of America is African American or Black. And we are now making a commitment that they will be heard, they will be respected. We will address the inconsistencies or injustices of the past for 12% of America. Whoever loses in this election is going to represent 46, 47, 48% of America. Surely they deserve the same respect that we are showing for that 12%. Surely we can have a government that represents all ideas, all visions, all priorities for the future. And if we don't, America will not be the same country.
Well, Frank Luntz, a legendary pollster, and just has so many insights into the way Americans feel. I could not have imagined a better interview, and I hope you stay well. Thank you so much for joining us today.
And let's do this 1 week before the election. How about you and I get back together and we do another 23 minutes for your viewers?
You have a deal.
Great.
Thank you. Frank Luntz, great to be with you. So what's the bottom line? The race for the White House is on. With a country that's deeply divided between those who love what Donald Trump stands for and those who hate it, it can go either way. And that's even before we figure out what Joe Biden is for and against, and before what foreign countries do to meddle in the election. And all that before any October surprises. Joe Biden's North Star is to maintain old school propriety. He wants to be a uniter rather than a divider. But this could leave him vulnerable to Donald Trump's divide and antagonize tactics, especially when they debate each other starting next month. And then, even on election day, with growing tensions over mail-in ballots, we'll possibly be in a situation where we don't know whether Donald Trump or Joe Biden won for weeks. Our guest, Frank Luntz, said that as things now stand, Trump is undermining himself, and that the race is Biden's to lose. The only thing we know for sure right now is that the 2020 election is likely to be the messiest election in any of our lifetimes. And that's the bottom line.